everyone, and welcome to the 60th episode of the Plug In Play podcast. I am your host, Henry, and we have a jam-packed show for you this week. We have PlayStation having DRM. Man, people seemed upset about that. GameStop wants to buy eBay. We'll run through the numbers and we'll see if how that makes any sense. We have Xbox trying to move away from Copilot. Who would have suspected? And of course, you're going to pay $100 for GTA 6. Did you know that? And then a new Star Fox game just got announced. We'll talk about that in the details. And then, of course, for impressions, we have Sonic Superstars, one of the newest 2D Sonic games I ran through pretty quick. Gotta go fast, you gotta make a speed reference when talking about Sonic. And then Metal Gear Solid Delta, the remake of Metal Gear Solid 3. Ran through that recently. I have some choice thoughts, I think, about that one. So we'll get into that in the impressions segment towards the end of the show. So before we do that, though, I have a couple of things I want to tell you. They're very important. Some of these things may save your life. It is very possible. And those things are following us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever your preferred podcasting situation is. Why not give us a follow, give us a review, give us a like, give it a comment, give it anything you want, as long as it's a nice one. That would be great. On top of that, you can follow us on any of your favorite social media platforms. We're around. We're on your Twitter, your X's, whatever you prefer, your TikToks, your Instagram, your YouTube, and it's all at Plug In Play Pod 1. Don't forget the 1. If you leave a comment on any of our videos, you have a possibility of it being read off on the show. I'll have a conversation with you because that's what this podcast is all about, is talking with people about video games. So please, by all means, do that, and we will be read out in the comment corner. If you don't want to do that, if you're a little bit more private, but then also you want me to talk about it anyways publicly, then you can send me an email at thepluginplaypodcast1@gmail.com. If that is too long for you to remember, it is in the description, along with timestamps. If you don't like what I have to say, you'd prefer me say something else, you can use those scampy timestamps to just skip on to whatever you want to hear, right? So it's a labor of love. I do it for you. And that is everything that I have to say about housekeeping. So now let's get into just you and me chatting it up, man. So little FYI, behind the scenes right here for you and me, because you just sat through all the housekeeping, you deserve to hear the truth. And the truth is, I am recording this on a Thursday. I'm going to be out of town for a little bit, so won't be able to have the time to do what I normally do for the podcast, or the schedule that I normally try to keep for doing everything for the podcast. So I had to do it a little bit earlier. So if there's something that seems kind of amiss, I'm sure some gigantic news like Microsoft is shutting down Xbox will happen on Friday, and then it's like, oh, frick, well, got to wait another 2 weeks to talk about this. But that's why, there's a possibility that something may have slipped through the cracks. As of just last night, Star Fox got revealed. So we'll talk about that later in the news. But, that is what it is. But I have watched a video game film. This obviously doesn't fit in the news or the impressions segment, so shoving it in at the beginning here is I watched the Super Mario Galaxy movie. Wow, everybody loves the Super Mario Galaxy movies. Those things are doing very well commercially. They're making a lot of money, billions in the box office, but they are critically panned. It was almost comical, the reviews that some people were putting out when this movie initially released. It was, I remember there were some reviews that were like, this movie made me like lose my soul. Like I feel like entertainment is dead because of this movie. And let me tell you, I've seen the film now, and let me tell you, I'm not even a very huge fan of the first film either. I actually rewatched the first film before watching the second one, and it reminded me just how much of a movie that is. Dang, that is a movie. It really does feel like the script for the original Super Mario Brothers movie by Illumination was made by somebody who was about to quit or was sick or just really was just phoning it in. Just they were like, I have to write this movie script and I really just don't care about what happens or how it happens. Just make it the most cliche movie-esque movie you've ever seen. And that's what the Super Mario Brothers movie is. If I had a nickel for every like, wow, you're really cool, Mario. Wow, let's go fight evil together. Like it's like very direct, very stereotypical. Things just kind of happen for the sake of happening. Like, yeah, Mario, you have to fight Donkey Kong in order to get my army. It's like, okay, I mean, like, I guess that kind of makes sense within the world we're in, I guess. And then Donkey Kong's like, I just don't like you, Mario. It's like, okay, I mean, but why? I guess it's because he beat him in a battle, but like he continues to do that, and then he just all of a sudden likes him. It's just the movie feels contrived. It's contrived. It's happening. Things are happening because they have to happen. It's not because they're actually like written in a good way. Like there's a very easy way to do that in the first movie to make Donkey Kong and Mario not like each other. Donkey Kong's kind of a jerk. Like in canonical lore with the games, Donkey Kong steals a woman. He kidnaps a woman and Mario has to go save her. It's not Princess Peach canonically. It's Pauline, but it's still like Donkey Kong's kind of a jerkwad, and so it would be really easy to be like, "Oh yeah, I'm just a jerk." And Mario has to go stop him, and that's how they kind of build a rivalry. And then I don't know how you make them friends, but like it wouldn't just have to be like, well, yeah, Mario, we just have to be enemies because we just are. You know, like I don't know. I can go on and on about that movie. It is fine. It is if I was 5 years old, and I literally mean this. I know that people like to throw that number out there, like, oh, if I was 5 years old, maybe I'd like that. You know, like I genuinely mean it. If I was 5 years old, if my brain had not fully developed, I think I would genuinely enjoy the Mario movie. Like I really would. If I was 5. If I was in kindergarten, I think that movie would be pretty sick. There would be a lot of colors, a lot of moving shots that are different and interesting to look at, a lot of just kind of references to the games that don't really need to be there but are. You know, it would be a great movie for a 5-year-old, but for a 30-plus-year-old man, that is not the case. I have no interest in that at all. It's really only a movie I watched because it is a Mario movie. It has plenty of references to the games, so obviously that's the case. So that's what I did. And that's why I watched the Super Mario Galaxy movie. And I will say that people who reviewed this movie and they said, oh, well, it is the death of entertainment and it is the worst movie ever created. I saw those headlines and I was like, oh, well, it must be absolutely trashed on Rotten Tomatoes and everything. It's not as bad as I thought. And normally, if you look at reviews for movies versus reviews for games, which is what I typically look at, I don't typically follow movies very closely. So I don't know exactly how most reviews tend to land for most movies, but I know how they do review for most games, and games typically review much higher than movies. Movie critics can be freaking scathing. Those guys, I don't know. I thought gamers had problems, but art critics, like film critics, geez, those guys have some deep-seated issues they need to work out. But in this case, those quotes I think are laughably over the top. This movie is another movie. And I think it is objectively a worse film than the first Mario movie. So Super Mario Galaxy has a story. The story is Bowser. This is from the trailer, so I ain't spoiling Jack. All right, but Bowser Jr., who's obviously Bowser's son, kidnaps Rosalina, and then the whole movie's premise is essentially we have to go rescue Rosalina, and that is the story. Most of the movie doesn't really care about that story. There's just kind of stuff that happens in between the initial conflict and the climax. And I would say the climax doesn't even fully tie into the whole narrative of we have to like save Pauline in the first place. It really is just like Mario and crew go to different area. Area has references to the video games, rinse and repeat. And obviously, they meet Star Fox from, the Star Fox games. And there are many references to other Nintendo properties throughout this film. It is not just like, oh, well, it's Mario. And then they kind of throw in Star Fox 2, which they do kind of throw in Star Fox as well. But there's references to pretty much, and when I say this, I mean it, like every Mario game ever made. Like, I can't think of a Mario game off the top of my head that there is not a reference to in some way, shape, or form. There are even references that, and like my wife, she knows, we play a lot of the Mario games together, and she kind of knows a good bit about Mario, I'd say. And she was like, I didn't even know that was a thing. Like that's a thing in Mario. I was like, yeah. At one point, there's like a reference to an obscure villain in Mario, and she's like, who the heck is that guy? And I was like, honestly, I forgot the name of that character, but I know what they're pulling from. Like I know where that comes from. And then there's obviously references to other movies, not other movies, other games from, like, if you basically think of Super Smash Brothers, like half the freaking roster is in this movie at some point. Hopefully that's not a spoiler to you, but I wouldn't consider it to be one. But again, a lot of those references, a lot of those things just kind of come and go. They are not necessary to anything. They are not relevant to much of anything. So it is just, hey, do you know this thing? And it's like, yeah, I know this thing. Well, then you should really enjoy that. So as a gamer, I guess is where I'm ultimately landing on my opinion for this film. As a gamer, I actually liked the Super Mario Galaxy movie more. There is far more like hardcore gaming references, and it's honestly chock full of them than the first movie. And there's a lot of references, even subtle references, in the first movie. But like, it really does feel like, and this was something I thought of when I was watching the movie, this movie was highly collaborated with Miyamoto-san, the creator of Mario. And he had a lot to say about this movie, specifically that he thought critics were a little too hard on it. He thought that, the critics were hard on the first one, and he was like, well, surely they'll like this one more. And I see from a Miyamoto perspective why he thought this game would be more appealing to people, because it is more of just what the games are. The games are just, you just kind of run around and do things in different levels, and then at the end you save the princess. That's what the Mario games have always been. The story has never been the reason you play a Mario game. It's the imagery. It's what's going on. It's the polish of the game itself. The game. And like, this is a movie that is more like a Super Mario game than anything else. And that's cool. But I also think that, you need somebody to balance out Miyamoto's desire to put a lot of the game elements of the game in this movie with somebody who's also going to make a movie out of those elements, who's going to develop characters and have good writing. Bro, they made a movie about the Lego toys, the freaking plastic blocks, that was actually pretty freaking good. And you tell me you can't do that with Mario? One of the most well-known, liked characters in the video game industry, even though he doesn't necessarily have much of a personality or backstory or anything like that. You're telling me he doesn't have a charm to him that already doesn't exist? Come on. Absolutely. You need somebody who can make that into a good script and have a story and characters that are likable and jokes that are well written, and that just doesn't really exist in these movies. It really does feel like Illumination is the studio that made this film, which is the same studio that made Despicable Me, Minions is kind of their big ones. They made like The Lorax from Dr. Seuss, a few other films that you've certainly heard of. They're very, very, very well regarded for their animation. And the animation in this film is phenomenal. It's great. It feels like every shot from this movie is just an excuse to show off their design chops with their animation. It does not feel like each shot is necessary from any perspective other than Miyamoto wanted this to be a reference to the games and Illumination wanted to show off a really cool looking set piece or moment or something like that. And while those two things are cool and well done objectively from those perspectives, it does not come together into a satisfying whole of any kind of cinema or story or characters or anything else. It is just a culmination of pretty pictures and references to the games, which, if that is your standard for what you thought this movie should be, this movie is going to blow your socks off. It's going to be great. If you are somebody like myself who probably wished this could have been something a little bit more elevated, a little bit more interesting, a little bit more than just like put your kids in front of it and they will be happy for an hour and a half, I feel like you're going to be disappointed. And like I said, I'm not necessarily frustrated because I'm glad that we have video game movies that are doing well. It's just because for the longest time we had every video game movie that was ever created sucked major balls. It was horrible. So the fact that we have anything that's of any kind of worth that anybody wants to see, that's doing well, and is encouraging more studios to make more video game movies, fantastic. Love to hear it. I just wish we're setting a better bar for what is considered acceptable in our video game industry movies. So, I don't know. Ultimately, I came away from this movie and I'm like, this is like a 6. This is like a 6 out of 10. Would I watch it again? Sure. If I had kids, holy frick, this would be amazing. If I had a child from the ages of like freaking 1 to 6 or 7, maybe 8, wow, this would be the perfect film for them. Absolutely perfect. But I don't. And so it makes it very difficult for me as like a dude who this is clearly not the target audience for the film to care about it. They're clearly going to make more. Obviously, they've had a DK movie in production for a few years at this point. They're obviously making the Zelda live action film. Fox was introduced to clearly be kind of a expanded thing that they would love to probably build off of in the future. Of course, they just announced a new game for him, so they want him to kind of be a brand that would be propagated in the future as well. So that's kind of obvious. But overall, like I don't have great faith in Nintendo movies because of this movie. Like, I think that they're going to be something I watch because I'm a gamer and because I respect the medium and I want to see how it's doing, but I don't foresee myself enjoying any of the future Nintendo products. It's very possible that a good director or writer or something gets a hold of one of the ones in the future, but you're always going to have Nintendo being very hard on these projects in terms of creative control. So, if Miyamoto's idea of this is a really great film is this, then that's a really tough sell for me to hear any of these movies are going to be great in the future because they're going to have the exact same, oversight and creative control from Miyamoto. So we'll see. But that's 20 minutes into the freaking episode, and I finally shut the frick up about a movie that nobody seemed to love. So let's get into the comment corner. Oh, frick, that's right. We have the comment corner. Well, I'm never going to be upset about the comment corner because I love the comment corner. I love my peoples. I love it when people want to interact. I love it when they want to talk about things with me. And so we have just that. And so this is from Kyle.hack on our Instagram page. We love Kyle. He's a great guy. This is the first time he's commented, but it's an interesting conversation he wanted to have. So this was about Game Pass. So a lot of people actually commented on this, had some umbrage with how I was portraying the situation. It's actually pretty interesting. I've been dogging Game Pass for a minute now because it is not objectively performing very well. So it is odd to see Xbox fanboys kind of defend it so what's the word I'm looking for? Ardently? No, that's not it. We'll skip that word, but very vehemently. They are very hardcore defenders of Xbox, and I've heard of Xbox defenders, and I'm like, I don't know how you can still be an Xbox fanboy in this day and age. It's very clear that they've made a lot of missteps. A lot of problems have been caused by their management, by their decisions that they've made. So it's very hard for me to look at what they're saying and they're like, oh yeah, like I totally agree that you should still be a fan of Xbox. I really think you should get the frick away from this brand. It is not been doing very well the past few years. For a while, the whole past 2 generations really, they've dropped the ball. But I said more or less, I was saying, hey, last year Game Pass didn't do very well, and it's because, hey, why would you even want a Game Pass subscription? Well, I'm going to tell you. And I went through all the games that they released as like day one exclusives from Xbox first party or published by first party to see if that was worth your time, worth subscribing for. And the ultimate answer I gave was like most of these games had mixed reception or was like it was okay reception. It wasn't anything fantastic. So he kind of got on me and he said, so we're going to move into Kyle's comment here. He says, quote, I'm not gonna champion a subscription service for games, but the whole factor as to why Guy isn't gonna play these games is review and Metacritic. I'm sorry, I'm just reading verbatim at the moment. Like he's only validating games if they have reviewed well and quote set the world on fire. If you're already subscribed to the service, why not give them a try and judge entirely for yourself? Why do you need reviews and other people's opinions to choose if a piece of art is worth your time? Play the games and decide for yourself if you like them, and stop using arbitrary things like reviewers to decide things for you. It's an interesting question or an interesting comment because it touches on a couple of things that I think are very unique to games and also very relevant. And conversation topics that people like to bring up time to time, and they're very divisive, I'd say. So number one is, what are reviews for? Do reviews matter? Are critics right? And I love this question because I play Fantasy Critic. So like I find reviews in video games to be one of the most interesting aspects of any part of the video game industry because it's, what do people like? What will people like? Is it predictable? Is it understandable why somebody doesn't like something or somebody does? Is a game with wide market appeal that's good or not wide market appeal that's bad? Like, does that matter? And ultimately, I think the answer is yes and no at the same time, which is unfortunate. But in this case, I went through every single one of these games and I gave their Metacritic score, and most of them were like 8s. It was typically around 8s. So I basically said, look, if it's an 8, most people are going to look at that and say it's good, but probably not great. Like Clair Obscur is a game that's probably helped Game Pass a lot because that game reviewed 92, 93, whatever the frick it ended up being. And that's a game I think people are obviously going to say, oh yeah, I gotta play Clair Obscur, and the easiest way to do that is through Game Pass. So that probably helped out a lot in terms of subscription, even though that game was multi-plat. I played Clair Obscur through Game Pass because I was like, oh well, I didn't know this game was going to be any good, and now it's getting great reviews. Best way for me to try that out is to, try out it on Game Pass. And the same thing is going to happen with Mixtape. Reviews just dropped it for it, and it's on Game Pass day one, and it is also a game that is doing really, really well, and I didn't expect that to happen. And so it's like, oh, well, I should probably give it a try on Game Pass because I wasn't expecting this game to be good, but now I can try it. Anyway, it's kind of a little bit beside the point. The other thing that he brings up is essentially like, hey, this is art. Like how can you really objectively critique something that's art? And it's like, well, you can't, right? It's technically not possible to critique art because art is subjective. You can't give art a score of 1 through 10 and call it good or bad, but like you have to in some way be able to quantify if a game is good or bad for the purposes of just understanding if it's even worth your time. There's so many games out there, like there has to be a way for you to be like, oh well. And there's a lot of times where I'll see a game and it's like got a 75 and I was like looking forward to it, and I'll be like, oh dude, it's a 75, it's not worth it. I have way too many other games to play that are reviewed much better, and so most likely I will enjoy them more. And I tend to think that reviewers are typically, at least if you look in the Metacritic sense of things, close to what a game really is. And like I understand why most reviewers end up where they do for the scores that they review for the games that they review. So I kind of understand it. In this case, I responded to him and I said, reviews are just a tool to gauge public reception. The higher the reviews are, the more well liked a game is. I'm not trying to say any of these games are bad or not worth playing. I've played most of them that I listed and they were all fine. The video is primarily just about getting people to subscribe to Game Pass. The only way to convince people to do that is to have games a large number of players will see the value in and subscribe to play. If the games are just considered good by most people, then most people likely won't see the need to go out of their way and sign up and play them. He responds. We have a conversation. I love it. And he says, oh no, I agree. The biggest problem with the Game Pass subscription is not having 2 to 3 games a month that are must-haves validating the point of the subscription. I just think you tend to lean on reviews too much as a reason to judge the game, even if you didn't intend it that way. You're speaking to genuinely about art and enjoyment of art, and it's very subjective at the end of the day. Now, kind of backs down a little bit, right? You know, you know what I'm saying? I kind of put him in his place. I'm just kidding. Thank you, Kyle Hack, for the for the comment. But I first off immediately disagree with there needs to be 2 to 3 games a month that are must-haves validating the point of the subscription. That's insanity. I think that's crazy. If you're thinking Microsoft can pump out 2 to 3 games a month that are must-haves, I think obviously what he's considering is like a High on Life 2. It's considered like a quote-unquote must-have. That's not a game that is necessarily exclusive to Game Pass or even published by by Xbox, but it is something that is something that's there and makes your subscription worth it because you can just play it there. If that's your call, I understand that. But when I consider a must-have, I don't consider High on Life 2 a must-have, and I guess that kind of fades into what he's particularly saying. But I would say like you need one a month. I'd say one a month is like kind of your real great like sweet spot. One game a month that makes it 2 to 3 games a month on Game Pass, bro. I don't know where I'd get the time. I don't have time now for 2 to 3 games a month without Game Pass giving them to me for no freaking reason. That would be way too many games for me to play. And I actually have a story about this later on in the news that kind of ties into this, but that's way too much. But then he kind of goes into like, well, what, it almost kind of feeds back into his earlier comment of like, well, there needs to be 2 to 3 games that are must haves in the subscription to justify it. And it's like, well, okay, well, you also just said that it's art. Well, how do you justify what a must-have is if it's art? That doesn't make any sense. It almost feels like he agrees with me to an extent. And I respond and I say, and I mean, I can just respond to you right now. You don't have to freaking read it. I can talk to you. But in this case, I'll just read the comment because I think I did an okay job at responding to it. And I said, that's the problem, right? All art is subjective, so there's no way to objectively quantify it. But for the sake of the business and for the sake of the conversation, there has to be. Reviews are really the only way we have of doing that outside of the sales, and we don't know how many people are subscribing to Game Pass for a specific game, so we have to use reviews. If we agree that Game Pass needs must-play titles, then there needs to be a way to determine what the must-play titles are for a large audience. And yeah, I mean, I think I knocked it out of the park. I think I need to just go into just the commenting business because I'm clearly way more succinct and way more direct than just rambling into the mic like I am right now. But yeah, I think it ultimately comes down to reviews are a large part of what makes, video games, not what makes video games, but what determines what a game is good what game is bad, what game you should play, what game you shouldn't. I'm not saying that you should 100% ever do that, and I don't, by the way. I often play every year. I play at least a handful of like 70 plus games because I'm like, well, I thought that game looked cool. Currently, Dead as Disco is hitting mid to high 70s in reviews, and if I was going by a normal, I at this point in my gaming career, if a game does not have an 85 plus, I immediately kind of look at that as like I'll probably put that on the back burner. I don't need to play that right now. If it is a game, even if I don't particularly care for the genre too much, and it's an 87, 88, something like that, I'm like, I got to play that. Like, that game is likely going to be really good because a vast majority of reviewers said this game is worth your time. And if it's that appealing to a wide number of people, it's probably appealing to me. So it's worth picking up. So, is there a way to justify a game you're buying on Game Pass other than reviews? Yeah, sure. But it's very, very difficult. So that's why I did what I did in saying, Avowed was an 81 and therefore probably not worth subscribing for. And there were a lot of people who actually took umbrage with this and were like, well, if you got, and that, I'm not going to read off who they were in their exact comments, but the gist of their comments were, well, if you bought every single one of the games that you just listed, that would be worth your price of entry to Game Pass. So it's like totally worth it. I'm like, well, guys, let's be real. How many of you actually wanted to play every single one of those games that I just listed? Like, they're pretty diverse games in a lot of different ways, and not all of them were considered that good. So if you're telling me everybody who wanted to play Call of Duty on Game Pass also wanted to play South of Midnight, you're freaking lying to me. Or Keeper, you're freaking lying to me. There is no way that there are enough people getting every single Xbox Game Pass Day 1 game and playing them for their Game Pass subscription to justify the price. That's like saying, guys, look, Netflix, they have like millions of movies and TV shows, crazy amounts of hours of content on Netflix, and like, it's totally makes it totally worth your subscription. Bro, you're not watching everything that Netflix puts on the subscription service. If you're telling me that you're watching everything on Netflix, one, you're lying. And two, you're not enjoying all of it. There's no shot that you enjoy all media that much that you're like, oh yeah, dude, I freaking went from watching the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants to freaking Top Gun. And it's like, they were both 10 out of 10s. Like, shut the frick up. Like, no way. Like, I don't believe you at all. Like, your taste is probably pretty generic and pretty understandable to fit in your demographic, and that's totally fine. There's no issue with that. I absolutely have a demographic as hardcore white 30-plus-year-old gamer, whatever the frick. I'm whatever box I'm put in, and it typically falls pretty accurately in terms of my gaming taste. So like, I understand. But you can't say that everything on a subscription service added up is like the equivalent of what you actually are. It makes it worth what you're paying, because the point of a subscription service is that you're not consuming everything. You're consuming only the things that apply to your tastes. So of course you're not going to play freaking everything and buy everything, and that's how you're going to justify the subscription of your the price of your subscription. So, duh. But anyway, not the best comment corner. That was a little elongated, wasn't it? But I do appreciate all of my commenters. I do appreciate anybody who wants to have a conversation, and I love having them, even though sometimes they are a little pointed, and they drain me quite a bit. But at the end of the day, I am grateful that anybody even sees my videos, or my shorts, or whatever the case is, or my podcast, and interacts with it in any way, because I never thought anybody would. So that's really awesome. So thank you very much to Kyle.hack for your wonderful conversation that you provided this comment corner. So now that we're half an hour in, let's move on to the news. The news, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to start off with PlayStation's DRM controversy ends up being nothing but a nothing burger. So, this was all over my news feeds for a while. I have a friend who's a big not a big, but he's a pretty sizably small internet influencer. He's a local here in town, and I follow him to support. But he was freaking out about it. He was like, "Yo, PlayStation DRM, I'm out of here. I'm never gonna buy another game on PlayStation ever again. These guys are freaking out." And I saw that, and I was like, and it, he got hundreds of retweets and all sorts of crazy nonsense. I was like, "What the frick is going on?" I looked up the news, and it was like, "Oh, PlayStation has DRM." And then I immediately saw, like, this is a rumor. Like, we haven't gotten any kind of confirmation from Sony yet. We really don't know what's going on 100%. And I was like, oh, this seems a little off. Like, I cannot imagine that Sony put DRM into the console and just didn't tell anybody and just thought they would get away with it. Like, I can't see a world where Sony thought that was a great idea. So, essentially, here's what happened. New software slash really hardware patch went out for PlayStation 5 for all that good stuff. In this patch, people started noticing, so this was not something that was in the patch notes or anything like that. They noticed, hey, there's a 30-day timer put on any of my newly purchased digital games. So if after this patch, if you downloaded a game or bought a game specifically, not downloaded, but bought a game, you would now have a 30-day timer put on your games. And so it was assumed that if a player did not connect to the internet within 30 days, the license for that game would be removed. In other words, you could no longer play it until you went back and connected to the internet again, which guess what that is? That's DRM. That is another way to say DRM, which is essentially meaning you have to be connected to the internet in order to play your game. So, people freaked out. It was days of people freaking out and like, oh my gosh, Sony has now put DRM on their consoles. The PlayStation heyday is over. Everybody jump ship, go to PC. And that just seemed a little far-fetched to me. Now, of course, I'm saying this with hindsight, but I'm genuinely saying, even at the time, I was like, I need to see genuine reporting on this. I need confirmation that this is what's happening, because I don't see any legitimate news sites actually reporting on this and saying, "Oh, there's DRM now." Any legitimate news source was not saying that. So I was like, okay, I really need some hardcore confirmation on this. So a few days later, people continued to tinker around with this, and they said, "Oh, the timer is actually going away after 14 days." So it wasn't actually 30 days. So apparently it originally showed as 30 days, but then after 14 days, the timer went away. So they were like, okay, clearly there's something wrong here. Like, why is that the case? And they started kind of going around and thinking about it, and they were like, oh, this is to protect against hackers. This is not actually DRM. It's just a check to make sure people aren't stealing games. And you're like, Henry, what the frick are you talking about? And the essential cases here. So look, I'm not a criminal, so I don't follow these circles and know how this works. But I can tell you this. After reading about it, here's what people had figured out and what Sony was attempting to stop. You can, and a lot of people don't even realize this, you can get a refund for a digital game. A lot of Sony's policies are pretty much refund proof. You're not supposed to really get refunds for games at all on PlayStation. So the only real workaround to that is if you bought a game digitally and then you never played it, you can still request a refund from Sony. And you can get your game, essentially you can get the money for the game back. So what people had figured out to do is you would pre-order a game or buy a game, and then you would immediately go offline. And then you would play the game, and then you would beat it. And then you would go back online, and then the refund would process, and the game would be taken away from you. But you had already played the game. So, as long as your console remained offline, you were able to play the game pretty much for free. So, eventually, several days later, it's probably like 4 or 5 days later, Sony issued an actual statement and they acknowledged, hey, yeah, this is only a temporary check. After 14 days, your game is yours. You have no issues. We're just doing this because we just thought to do it. They did not acknowledge that it was because of ill actors or hackers or anything like that, which apparently, I was checking the article out on VGC, which most of my sources come from VGC. But in this case, I was looking at VGC, and the article stated that this is actually normally a problem with hacked PS4s. They would extract the license, and then they would do what I said, basically, earlier. So it was mainly a PlayStation 4 issue, not a PlayStation 5 issue. Sony is notoriously anti-hacker. They pretty much killed the Vita because it was jailbroken pretty quickly. And they were like, we cannot allow people to use this console anymore because it's so broken that, we're really afraid piracy is going to eat into our bottom line. Which, as a consumer that is typically doing things pretty legally, if I have the option to, I it's so surprising to me to hear that piracy is such a large market that a lot of companies, not most, but a lot of companies are very scared of piracy and how much of a chunk of their bottom line it can take out of their sales and their projections and everything like that, to a point where they're like, well, so many people are going offline and refunding their games that we need to implement a fix for this. Same thing for the Vita, that it was like, well, this thing is so jailbroken that we really just need to stop supporting it entirely. That's kind of crazy to me. That people are that much on the high seas, they're pirating the frick out of stuff. So, all in all, it's understandable. I mean, Sony's a business and they don't want people stealing their stuff, and this is definitely like you're kind of stealing the game at that point, for sure. I would definitely call that stealing the game. So, I understand trying to get around it, trying to stop it, but I will say that this communication from Sony was absolutely horrific. This is one of those things that you really just need to get out and talk about either prior to this happening. What they wanted, obviously, was they didn't want to draw attention to the fact that there was a problem already. They didn't want to say like, yeah, we've had hackers steal a bunch of stuff and all that good stuff. They didn't want to draw attention to that. And I understand that, because then you're just going to attract more bad actors to try and figure out, oh, well, there must be another problem with the PlayStation somewhere. Maybe I can figure out how to hack it in a different way. So I understand. But when this was clearly spreading like wildfire over the internet, gamers were freaking out, threatening to jump ship completely from the platform. And then they're like, oh, well, we're not going to make a statement for a few days. Like, just come out and say the exact same thing you said in your statement, but say it immediately after this becomes a very public, understandably, or not very understandably, but a very public issue. Just come out and freaking address it. And you probably save yourself a lot of heartache and a lot of I would not be surprised if some people still don't know that this is a temporary thing, that they think Sony is, because it was spreading like wildfire for days. Nobody was correcting anybody. It was just like, well, I don't know, maybe Sony's not saying anything about it and it looks kind of bad, so I think this is just, there's DRM on it. So, again, there's also an angle of, who the frick really cares about DRM on a console anyway? You are already, if you're buying digitally, you are locked into that license on that console. And how often are you genuinely not connected to the internet while playing your games? I get it. It's a restriction, but like, it's not one that's actually going to affect you in a significant way. So I don't understand the huge hubbub there either. So I don't know. It all seemed like just a huge nothing burger to me. Gamers like to freak out over things for the sake of freaking out, but I also understand you need to stand your ground, and because they take an inch, they're going to take a mile. And so if you start freaking out about this now, it's probably for the best, because then when they actually start considering DRM or something that may even be bigger than DRM in terms of limiting your consumer freedom, then you're really going to want to, they're going to think twice, because they're going to know, oh, well, the little thing we did really pissed a lot of people off. So if we do a bigger thing, that would even be worse. So that was that nothing burger. If you missed that drama, you're probably for the best because it ended up being nothing. So next, and this is one I'm a little intimidated to get into. I'm not gonna lie, but I'm gonna do my best. So who doesn't love to just crap all over GameStop, right? The retailer that has been taking us gamers for a ride for decades at this point. GameStop offers to buy eBay for $56 billion. Now you're already, if you have not heard the story yet, you are already probably raising your eyebrows like, oh, what? eBay? GameStop? Isn't GameStop some floundering company that can hardly get their feet up underneath them to walk out the door on most days, yet alone buy a very well-known company like eBay? Well, you probably don't even know the half of it. In all honesty, you probably don't even know the half of it. This deal went through a large range of what is even going on here kind of situation before it even came to a head. So, the CEO of GameStop, Ryan Cohen of Chewy fame, so he's known for kind of building up Chewy and selling it off to PetSmart and basically being a business mogul in one way, shape, or form. He actually took over as GameStop CEO and kind of turned it around. GameStop was kind of known for losing a lot of money, and the gaming industry and in general, like the retail industry within that sector was known for really floundering. And he came in and he turned it around. Admittedly, it was all cost-cutting efforts. He slashed a bunch of stores. He closed a bunch of stores. He stopped a bunch of marketing. He basically cut costs to a point where the company eventually became profitable. He's also done a couple of things like started to shift into trading cards for sales and a lot of nerd goods. Like you can buy a freaking One Piece t-shirt that you probably should have gotten at Hot Topic, 2 decades ago, but now you can get it at GameStop. Anyway, he's turned the company around to an actual profitable venture, which is kind of insane because nobody thought that was possible with GameStop. Everybody thought GameStop's business model was basically dead. There was no way of surviving, but he found a way of making it work. And he even states that in a lot of his recent interviews. Like, hey, didn't you think this company was supposed to be dead 6 times over? It was supposed to file for bankruptcy several times. And here we are. We're actually making a profit. Like, we've turned things around. There is some legitimacy to his business acumen. Like, he has done several things that are pretty impressive in terms of a business capacity. So there is some stuff there. He also has done some stuff that's kind of stupid. So, there is some smoke to the fire in both situations in this instance. So, Ryan Cohen, he made an unsolicited, non-binding offer for $125, a premium of about 20% a share, and in cash and stock. The cash would be coming from their stockpile, which is about $9 billion, and a bank loan from TD Bank, which was $20 billion. So GameStop shares at the time were about $25, and eBay's were about $100. So just at market cap, eBay's shares are 4 times as big as GameStop. So is it possible to get a company that is smaller to buy a bigger company? Absolutely. And in this case, GameStop would be offering a 20% premium, which, hey, great. Like, as an investor, that's a wonderful proposal. Here's the thing. GameStop is not known as being the most stable company. It has gone through many periods of ups and downs, and if you're an investor and you're going to sell your company to GameStop, you're essentially your eBay stock turns into GameStop stock. And if you don't trust the leadership of GameStop to basically right the ship and turn it into something super profitable and super stable, then eventually all the stock that you own in eBay that got transferred to GameStop is going to sink. It's going to suck. So you're going to lose money. So you don't want to be bought out by a company that, yeah, sure, you're going to get a 20% premium on all your stock, but you don't want to get bought out by a company that's then going to tank the shares of the stock that you own. So, it probably was not the best idea for eBay to do this. This is also an unsolicited, non-binding offer. So It's not fully enforced in any way. Like there's no actual cement to this deal, at all. And then the TD bank loan for the 20 billion was something that was, quote, highly confident in getting. So this was essentially an early stages talk with TD that they said, hey, we'll give you the money, but we're not like 100% on board yet. Like we probably would, but like we really need to probably make sure that we would. So they don't even 110% have the money from TD Bank to do this loan. At the news, GameStop shares sank 10%. In other words, nobody thought that this was a good idea. So to run through the money here, GameStop's market value, if they sold all of their shares in their stock, they would be at about $25 billion. They're getting a $20 billion loan from TD Bank, which would bring you up to about $45 billion. And then they have about $9 billion in capital just kind of lying around. So, seeing as this was a $56 billion offer, that puts them still about $7 billion short to make this offer acceptable. You have to actually have the money. Now, this ultimately, and the reason I go through this is this already looks like a pretty far-fetched deal. It already looks kind of iffy. But technically, they can still make the whole thing work. If they dilute shares, they basically make more shares of the company to then be able to sell off and then make that, estimated $9 billion there. But that's still we're really making a lot of concessions. We're really doing a lot of damage to, our stock, our capital, our debt that we're going to be taking on from this loan. We're going to have to start paying interest on the loan. That's a lot to finally be able to make the $56 billion work to get eBay in your pocket. So, CEO Ryan Cohen went on a media tour to try and drum up, excitement for this. GameStop, he has had success with in the past with retail investors. Obviously, retail investors bought the heck out of GameStop stock during the pandemic. It skyrocketed, and at the time, they utilized that mania, that craze, to sell off a lot of their shares when they knew the company was highly overprofited or highly overprojected in terms of its stock because of all these crazy retail investors, that they just went ahead and sold off a bunch of their own stock and put it in essentially to freaking Bitcoin. So, they have in the past had a lot of success with retail investors. So that's what these interviews were likely trying to do, was kind of drum up excitement from a retail perspective to then get the price of GameStop higher, and then they can probably make that $7 billion that they're trying to kind of meet the gap of for the 56, right? So he went on CNBC. That was his first interview, and he had a quote-unquote combative interview that led to even further skepticism of the deal. So I watched this interview, and essentially the host of the program was like, hey, so let's just walk through it for the viewers. I've read your documents, I've seen your proposal. I want the viewers who haven't seen it to understand, how are we getting to the number that you're providing? And Cohen essentially is just like, well, you can read the website, guy. You can read the website. And he's like, well, yeah, I know I can. And I did. But I want you, the CEO of the company, the guy behind the deal, to actually tell me so that the viewers can understand. And he's like, bro, I don't know what to tell you. You can just go read the freaking website. And that was kind of the vast majority of the interview, and it did not inspire confidence. I would not necessarily consider it combative, but you certainly can. He's definitely not being very forthcoming on a deal that he's trying to spoke up enthusiasm for. So you probably should be, talking about this and telling people how it's going to work and why it's a good idea. But it's probably not a great thing that he did that. And the shares for eBay went up after this interview, and the shares for GameStop went further down after the interview. He also mentioned that he had not even spoken with eBay's management about the deal yet. So basically, when he told the public that this was something he wanted to do, eBay found out about it too. So they didn't even know if this was even close to being like a thing that was possible. Like typically, you need to at least go to the management of the company and say, "Hey, we're interested. What do you think?" And they'll probably say something like, "Well, I can just tell you right the frick now, no." Or they can say something like, "Well, we can consider it if you give us this number." And then if you give them that number, then like maybe the deal will actually go through. But he's made this huge public spectacle of it, and he's also like not even told eBay about it. And so eBay essentially comes out as like, "Hey, well, we're going to look at it. We're going to look at it. Don't worry." But Michael Burry, if you don't know Michael Burry is a very famous investor. You may know him from The Long Short, that movie with Stephen Carell and other big Hollywood actors. So he's the guy who predicted the housing market crash of 2008. And he came out and he's been a vocal advocate of buying GameStop stock, even after the meme craze went down, and has really helped the shares. And he came out and he was like, "I sold everything. When they said that, I sold absolutely everything. I want nothing to do with the stock anymore. There is no reason that they should be doing this. It is a dumb idea." And so he says, basically, if they were to do this, they would be taking on so much debt, which they would. They'd be taking on $20 billion of debt at the minimum, that they would be paying it off ad infinitum. They would be under such a house of debt that there would be very little chance of them being able to dig their way out. And yeah, I mean, it makes sense. And he says basically the few companies that ever have tried to do that have basically failed. He's like, there's only like 2 or 3 examples of companies that have done this that ever found a way out of this hole. So I get it. He's trying to be creative with debt, but that is not a very good solution. And I want nothing to do with the stock anymore if this is what their leadership is planning on doing. And hey, makes total sense to me. Kind of understand that. And then what is the actual plan for this merger? Which it would more so be, they would just be taking over eBay. Like GameStop would no longer function anymore. It would be eBay. But what is actually Cohen's plan? So his plan specifically is to turn eBay into a much bigger picture. He wants to make it a competitor with Amazon, and he's going to use retail stores from GameStop to do that. eBay obviously doesn't have very many. I'm pretty sure they have a couple, but they don't have very many retail stores. And so GameStop would essentially just turn all of their retail stores into eBay kind of selling places, buy, sell places, kind of pawn shops in a way. And then he would just slash a bunch of their marketing budget. So essentially his tried and true strategy of cost cutting. So that's what he would do to make eBay a much bigger and better thing. Beyond the fact that, they do align in terms of they're basically both pawn shops. In fact, GameStop 100% operates as a pawn shop legally. That's why, like, when you turn in a game for like trade-in, they're like, "I need to see your ID." It's because that's the law at pawn shops. You have to kind of show proof of identification, so that way if this ends up being a stolen good, they have identification that you're a real freaking person. They can go and freaking arrest you. So, other than that, there is not a huge likelihood of synergy here outside of the fact that they're just kind of both pawn shops. The real, I think, reason it was considered is because eBay has been struggling in recent years. But here's the catch. It's been turning it around. There has been a large-scale turnaround in recent years for eBay, and most analysts seem to think it's working. So if eBay is already doing a good job, getting over its faults and kind of turning the ship around, why do they need Ryan Cohen to come in and kind of, throw things a wrench, throw a wrench into things kind of deal? eBay is going to freaking reject this deal. Like, there's just no reason. I think any investor would say, yeah, we get a 20% increase in stock, but honestly, we're riding the ship so much right now that really probably wouldn't be worth it at this point to sell. Like, you really would only want to sell if eBay didn't think that there was any way to increase their stock anymore. So they might as well just get the big payout and run. And I think eBay is a big enough company and clearly doing enough to right the ship that there's no way that that's going to happen. So this is where we end up. We end up with a huge PR disaster for GameStop. I mean, eBay has not rejected the deal yet. I cannot see a world in which they do. Now you've just basically pissed off a bunch of investors. You've lost faith in a large part of the investing and analyst community. You kind of look like an idiot from a lot of places. Your first big interview at CNBC, and you kind of look like an a-hole. And then he did go on and do some more interviews with other outlets that were much more lighthearted, much more forthcoming. But you still have that one big stain on your reputation that really most people are pointing to when they're talking about this deal. And you look at eBay, which is doing pretty well. It's pretty stable. And you look at GameStop, which has had a history of being pretty sporadic in terms of how well it's performed. And you look at GameStop as just being this crazy wild card in the industry that's desperately trying to figure out a way to make this stuff work. And sure, Ryan Cohen has made miracles happen in the past, but like, what has Ryan Cohen actually done to increase sales? He's made GameStop into a bigger pawn shop, really. He's turned it into, well, now we're selling trading cards, which is where a lot of their money is actually coming from now. And, now we're selling Bitcoin. We have a Bitcoin storage now that we're trying to use, which obviously Bitcoin crashed. So recently from like over 100 to like down to 60 or something like that. So you lose 40% of your value there. So it's, it just, every time you talk about GameStop, you always hear the worst. And while I have to admit, like, great for GameStop for turning it around recently and continuing to do that, it really does seem like it's fly by your seat of your pants, and it seems like a crazy man is up there in the top making the decisions. And also, Ryan Cohen is just going to be told yes by everybody. He replaced the entire board at GameStop with basically all of his best buddies. So a bunch of yes men up there at GameStop's board, just kind of rattling along with him. So it's basically his ship to right and his decisions to make, and nobody's going to try to correct him on that. So I'm sure when he proposes something like, we're going to buy eBay, it's like, okay, well, nobody's going to say no. Like, everybody's kind of there just to kind of pat him on the back and say, you go, Ryan. Go get him. Go get that eBay for us. Bring us back a big old eBay. I kind of see that as what this is in a lot of ways. So I think it is a comical thing. I think it is. Hopefully I made that somewhat palatable, somewhat digestible, because that is a lot to digest. A lot of numbers, a lot of investment terms, and in all honesty, there's a lot of a deeper terminology and numbers that I could even go into there. But I tried to keep it pretty surface level. So hopefully that was understandable. But it is just one of those things that you just kind of look around. It's like, I want GameStop to survive because it is the one gaming bastion we have left physically. That's all we have from a bygone era. And it also helps out a lot of people who are trying to trade in games, trying to get money for them. Even if you say, oh yeah, GameStop never gives me any deals, it's like, well, if you play the system right, you can get an okay deal from GameStop. But like, I totally understand that. For the most part, they are gonna kind of take your money and run. But like, I don't know. It's just, I want GameStop to succeed in some way, shape, or form. I cannot see a path forward for them in a retail space when everything seems to be shifting to digital. So it's a really sad situation to see what seems to be a company just struggling to survive and doing some crazy freaking things to try and stay up there. And this does seem kind of freaking crazy. All right, we're going to try to move a little bit faster through the rest of these stories because we are already an hour in and I feel like we've hardly said anything. So or maybe it's been rambling too much. Who knows? But this is more of it's news, but it's more of a fun aside. I love numbers. Don't you love numbers? I love numbers. So In this case, it's numbers that are statistics from hardcore gamers. Specifically, 62% of hardcore gamers no longer buy full price games. This is according to a study from Generations in Play. They specifically say 38% of millennials and 42% of Gen Z say they still buy full priced games. Only 20% of Gen X said that they would. So I guess that adds up to 62% in some way, shape, or form. So essentially, why is this? Why is this? Well, according to one of the analysts behind the study, he said the market has shifted. Consumers are full in terms of things to play, watch, and read. Plus, games have a habit of launching unfinished or need a patch or two. So, considering those two factors, the drive to rush out and a day one and purchase a game isn't there the way in which it used to be. Stumbled over that one. Sorry. So this is pretty obvious to me. But it was obvious to me because I'm cheap. So I don't buy games at full price day one because games are expensive. And I play a lot of them. Like I play most of the new big games that come out every year. I just wait until Black Friday or maybe a year or something later where they're half off and I can get a game for a pretty reasonable price. $70 for a game day one, especially when, you know, there might be bugs in it or there might be patches that will come out down the line and make the game even better or add content for free that I'm much less likely to interact with if I play the game already and I've beaten it. Like I can experience that stuff the right way the first time if I just wait, and I can do it at a discounted rate. That just makes so much sense. I've done this for years anyways because I've always been poor. So when I was a kid, obviously everybody can relate to this, but when you're growing up, you don't have money because you don't have a job. So the only time you're going to get any money is if the tooth fairy gives you something or, something along those lines. So you're not going to have a lot of money to just drop and go and buy whatever game you want whenever you want. I still remember the first game I ever bought day one with my money, which was Infamous 1. From Sucker Punch. Infamous 1 came out on the PlayStation 3 when I was in high school, and I remember that I went and my grandmother's church needed people that were young and able-bodied to move tables for them, and they gave me $60 to move a bunch of tables and chairs and stuff around in like a ballroom or a big cafeteria or something like that. And I went out and I bought Infamous 1 day one. And that was the best day of my freaking life. One, because it was the summer, because Infamous 1 came out during the summer. A lot of Sucker Punch's games have come out kind of in the summertime. And I didn't have anything better to do, and that was back when games did not release every day. Like there was not a new must-play title every day with video games back when I was in high school. So like getting a new game then when there was nothing else better to do, I just kind of was sitting around at home, and I was like, oh man, I don't have the money to go out and buy this, but like now I do, and I did, and I loved Infamous 1. It was great, but I played the crap out of that game. But that kind of pattern persists, and I still look for a good deal. Like why would you buy a game day one when you know the game is going to go down in price? And I have so many other games that are so good that I can play. Like I will be the first to tell you, I bought Final Fantasy Tactics Remake because I've always wanted to play Final Fantasy Tactics. This is the way I wanted to play it, and I bought it day one. I pre-ordered it because I was like, I'm totally going to freaking play that game. It is still sitting sealed on my counter right now. I am looking directly at it, and I'm like, holy frick, I don't know when I'm going to get to play that game because I am looking at my backlog, and it continues to grow. There are new games that come out every month that are must-play titles, and I'm like, why would I go back and play Final Fantasy Tactics right now when I have 101 other games that are new and shiny? And yeah, sure, the Final Fantasy Tactics Remake is new and shiny, but it's an old game. Like there are new elements to it, like voice acting and stuff like that, but it's still an old game. Why would I not play the new shiny game that's right in front of me right now that I've already paid full price for? Sometimes even paid more money than that. Like, why would I not play Resident Evil 9 before I played Final Fantasy Tactics? You know, I paid full price for that. It was a more expensive game. It was newer. It was shinier. Sure, but like most of the time, I don't need to buy a game day one. Like, I just don't. Unless I'm really, really looking forward to that game, there's no need for me to do that. There's too many games coming out. I have access to too many of them. I continue to get access through PlayStation Plus Extra and Game Pass and many other avenues of sales and sorts that I'm like, oh, well, this Nintendo game was on sale for 50% off, and that's a godsend because Nintendo games never go on sale. I might as well just pick this up. And so now I'm like, oh, well, frick, now I have Metroid Dread that I picked up for $30 or something like that. It's like, well, I'm not super interested in playing Metroid Dread right now, but I would like to at some point, kind of deal. So it's like I have probably 100 games in my backlog that I'm willing to play at any given moment. If I am not revving and raring to play a game day one, why would I play? Why would I pay $70 when I know I can get a increased quality product with patches and a decreased price with sales later? There's just no reason. This has always been my mentality, but I think with the influx of, well, now, like, there's too many movies to watch, there's too many shows to watch, there's too many books to read, there's too many games to play. If you're not just a gamer and that's all you do, I am a gamer and that's really all I do. And I am actively like, there's too much bullcrap out there for me. So if you're like, oh, well, I also like watching TV and I also like watching movies and I also like reading books, I don't know where you're going to find the time to play any of these freaking things. So why would you buy it day one? There is no freaking reason. So I totally understand that. And I'm surprised it is not higher, but 62% is honestly pretty freaking good. Obviously, Gen X being the highest in terms of that is not a surprise at all. 80% of them won't buy a game day one. They have the least amount of time. They're the oldest. So they probably all of them have kids, stuff like that. So why would you buy a game day one? Just doesn't make any sense. You're probably also putting that money towards children or a house or something like that. So it makes a lot of sense why that's the case. And then of course, millennials and Gen Zs are both pretty similar. They're pretty close, 38 and 42, if of them would still buy it. So it's not a huge gap there. So a couple of other fun little tidbits that I kind of found from this study. Let's go through them real quick. Gen X consumers prioritize Google searches for discovering new games. 85% of millennials favor YouTube, and Gen Z prioritizes social media to find new games. Google searching a new game, that's crazy to me. I can't imagine Google searching, like, what is the new best game? And, like, just whatever's the top one is what I'm going to pick. But, like, I can also see somebody be like, I can't believe a freaking influencer told you this is a game. I am a millennial, and I most certainly use YouTube as a large factor for kind of getting a long form explanation as to what a game is good or a game is bad and whether I should try it or not. I also just get fed a lot of that as well. Gen Z, obviously, social media, it's no surprise there. Gen Z is the TikTok generation, so it is going to be getting a lot of its information from that, so that's not too surprising. Another little tidbit, Generation X respondents said they favor single player games, Gen Z prefers multiplayer titles, and millennials are evenly split. This is no surprise. Older generations will certainly be the ones to tell you that single player games were the only games at the time. So that's what they're kind of used to, which makes sense that they continued to prefer that into adulthood. And then as time has progressed, multiplayer has been like, as millennials were probably the first generation to really be raised with multiplayer games being a significant portion of their childhood, being Xbox Live and stuff like that. So it's understandable that, but even like I said, I'm a millennial and I prefer single player games. And that's because while Xbox was around for my childhood, a lot of my childhood was prior to Xbox Live or online multiplayer games kind of emerging and being more dominant. Gen Z, I mean, a lot of those guys were raised with Fortnite. So it makes a lot more sense that that's a way more prominent source of, entertainment for them and what they would probably lean towards. But yeah, it seems like that's a kind of continue down that track as time progresses. Multiplayer games will probably be the predominant way of playing games in the future. And then the final one is consumption of game guides varies by generation, with Gen X indexing higher on tips videos, millennials on map tools, and Generation Z on build guides, which I don't know why that is the case. I am a millennial. I really don't use map tools that much. I've heard that map tools are booming in popularity, but I don't really use map tools that much unless I'm like trying to search out collectibles for a game. And in all honesty, if you have a large open map that has collectibles in it, I don't want to play your game most of the time. That sounds like a Ubisoft game, in my opinion. So I really don't typically use map tools at all. I don't use tips videos because most of those are clickbait bullcrap, like 15 things I wish I knew before starting Crimson Desert. And it's like, okay, and it's always like, you can pick up things with the square button. And it's like, okay, like, you just basically took all the most basic bullcrap in the game that you get from the tutorial or just random stuff that you learned while playing the game, and you just said these are the 15 things you need to know. So I never watch those freaking things. That stuff is freaking lame. And then build guides. So build guides are going to be more tuned towards Generation Z because they play more multiplayer games. So having a build is something that you're more likely going to do in a multiplayer game than a single player game. Obviously, a single player game, you can have builds, but you're not going to give that much of a frick about a single player game's build. Like you can, but I think more multiplayer games are going to have a build that you can probably get a little bit more into, so that makes a little bit more sense there. So that's probably why. But it's just interesting to see that even varies at all. But that's just some fun little stuff I saw. If you're old, you do certain things. If you're young, you do certain things. Isn't that just interesting? Isn't that just interesting? Another fun thing that I kind of saw, they said, was more than likely, like Generation Z is also using games as like a social aspect. They like to kind of utilize it as they want to be the master of a specific game. They want to know everything about it so that they can be kind of elite within that community. And Gen X typically tries to squeeze the lemon for all the juice is the term that they used in the study. So like they buy one game, and even if it's single player, they play it forever, trying to get as much value from it. And I definitely understand both of those perspectives. Again, it seems like millennials do kind of get both of the generations. They're kind of that middleman in terms of these preferences. But I understand wanting to get the most bang for your buck from a game, but that's because I'm freaking cheap. And I also understand wanting to be a very knowledgeable player within a community. That's just normal. I feel like if you're in a game, you want to feel like, especially if you're in a game, I feel like there's an element of like escapism to that, where you're feeling like, oh yeah, like I'm better than everybody, even though I probably suck in real life. I'm able to be the best in this community, and that's what this community values, is being good at this game, which obviously makes sense. I don't know. It's a little bit of, I feel like that was something I felt when I played online games, which I haven't played that many of them, but when I played like an MMO or kind of something akin to that, I would always be like, dude, I think that dude over there who has all the best armor and he knows all the tips and tricks about this game and he's really good at it, like he's cool. I want to be like that guy. And I want to try to aspire to be like that guy. And then people will think I'm really cool. And if I ever met like a newer player or something and they saw how cool I was like, heck yeah, dude, I earned that. Like I am now the guy who's the top of the top to this guy, kind of deal. Hierarchy. It's how normal human nature works, I feel like. So it makes sense in general. That's just some fun stuff. Not really news necessarily, but fun to talk about. Next, Xbox removes Copilot Companion from consoles and mobile. This comes after Asha claimed that she was going to reevaluate AI usage in Xbox. Yeah. Who knew, right? This is very surprising to me. This is a continuation of Xbox changes that Asha is stewarding. So if you're unfamiliar with Copilot, it is basically their chat GPT. It is Microsoft's AI thing that they're trying to push everywhere and anywhere that they possibly can. So it's very odd that they're like, oh, well, we don't actually want to utilize it anymore on Xbox. That's weird, especially considering Asha is from an AI background and Microsoft is a huge AI driven company at this point. That is very suspicious that they want to remove it. But what was Copilot even being used for? Well, Copilot was being used primarily for like tips and tricks to like guide players. So some demonstrations that were shown that I saw were basically like, what if a player wanted to know how to build a sword in Minecraft? Because, Microsoft owns Minecraft, so of course they're going to use that as an example. But what if they wanted to build a sword and they would say, Copilot, how do I build a sword in Minecraft? And then the Copilot would look at its inventory and then it'd be like, oh, well, you have these blocks. You can make it to buy this. And if you don't have the blocks, it'd be like, well, you need to go find these blocks. Here, I'll try to guide you to these blocks. And like that would be how you do that. Or another example they gave was like if you're playing Overwatch, it would give you tips. You'd be like, hey, Copilot, who do I choose? And it'd be like, well, you've got 3 people who are playing DPS, so maybe you should freaking play a tank or a support because your teammates suck. And like they'd be like, okay, cool. Or you'd be like, why am I dying so much, Copilot? It'd be like, well, you freaking can't shoot anything and all your teammates are dead, so maybe you should freaking fall back and let your teammates work with you instead of being a lone loser out there on the front lines, you idiot. So that's kind of like the examples that they gave for what Copilot would be doing, Copilot Companion. So when I hear that, I say 2 things. First is, well, duh, nobody was probably freaking using Copilot Companion. Let's take a step back and look at Sony. One of their big PlayStation 5 features was PlayStation Tips. So you could add tips to games and have little videos that show people where collectibles are or how to beat boss fights or how to do certain things and stuff like that. Bro, I've never freaking used that feature. I've never freaking used it. It is genuinely easier for me to pull up my phone and type in, where is this collectible? And then like a YouTube video will immediately pop up and show me where it is than to go into the menu on PlayStation, hope that there's a video that shows me that, and then maybe it will show me a good enough video to actually explain to me where it is in the level. It's just easier to freaking find a YouTube video that shows me everything that I need to know, and I don't have to worry about it. So I've never used that. What is Copilot doing? The same freaking thing. If anything, it is the same thing as a Google search, pretty much. It's just right there. And unless it is so easy barrier to entry and so easy to understand and follow exactly what it's saying without a video or anything like that, it is not worth your time. So while this is a wonderful idea, it does not seem like it would be able to help with much. And so why are we investing further in it, especially when gamers seem to be kind of against AI in general? Let's just scrap the freaking thing. Honestly, surprised they're still doing that. Because like I said, they're such an AI focused company at this point, and Asha is a AI background executive. Why would she feel the need to do that? Well, here's the point number 2. Point number 2 is obviously AI is going to continue to be used at Microsoft. It's just going to be used in the development of games. It's not going to be customer facing. So if you're thinking here, Microsoft or Asha's like, oh yeah, we're not going to use AI anymore. Don't worry about that. I know that you don't like AI, and so we're taking away AI. Then you're dumb. You're a dumb man, because 100% this is going to be continued to be used. It will just be used in the development behind the scenes of games. From everything I've heard, analysts continue to say every game you're playing right now, AI is heavily being utilized. I know that I work in IT, and I know even the developers I work with, they are already shifting to a world in which a lot of the code that they produce is AI generated. So, bro, if you're afraid or you don't want to play games that have AI usage in them, you are absolutely out of luck because most of the games you're playing nowadays do. It's just a matter of how they utilize that AI, how obtrusive it is, and how much it distracts from the overall vision of the game. Overall, the AI at Microsoft is not going to be thrown out. Like they're going to absolutely continue to use it. But this is a brownie point situation, like it's Asha doing what she has to do to look good in the eyes of the consumer, and she continues to do that in many different ways. One of the other things that she did was she changed the Xbox boot up sequence or sound. And this honestly, I can't play the sound or anything like that, so you'll have to trust me. They're changing it though. In a couple of days, it'll be changed, and this seems completely unnecessary to me. Why are they changing the sound? This feels almost to me reminiscent of Elon Musk changing Twitter's name to X. It's just like, why? You're just losing the marketing appeal and like the iconic sound and everything that goes along with that you've had for decades, right? So it just feels like you're losing more than you're gaining by trying to change this. And it's nostalgia, it's everything like that. It's the brand appeal. I remember the freaking Xbox 360, Microsoft sound effect. Like it's iconic. So why are we changing it? And it's really just to show this is Asha's Xbox now. We are moving on from what we were. We are really trying to reestablish, rebrand. This also comes alongside Asha made a lot of, she moved around a lot of the personnel. So a lot of promotions, a lot of people moving into different positions than they were. So there's a lot of people. I'm not even going to go through all of it. It's not a lot of huge players, but a lot of big enough players that it's worth noting. So this is her going through a lot of different things, a lot of different changes over time, over a very short period of time that are meant to seem like, we are here to change Xbox for the better and to give her some brownie points with consumers that have really lost faith in Xbox. And I'm not going to lie, I feel that it is working for me. Like I actually do see her making enough changes here quickly enough, move fast and break things that it's possible that she could actually make some legitimate change to this organization that could help it. Here's the problem with that is that all of the things that she's done are all surface level. Like what does it really change? Oh, well, we're changing the Xbox update sequence or boot up sequence. Okay, cool, I guess. That really doesn't change anything for me. Oh, we're removing Copilot. Well, I never used it anyway. So I guess that's cool too. Oh, well, we decreased the price of Game Pass and removed Call of Duty Day 1 from it. Okay, well, the price is still higher than it was when you first came in, or before it got updated to $30 or whatever. And now I don't have Call of Duty on it anymore. Like, yeah, I guess I'm glad that I don't have to pay for Call of Duty anymore and that the price is lower than it was, but like it's still higher than it should be, and it was before the huge price increase. So like, what have you really done? Like, and the answer is, well, she has made changes, and you can point to all the changes that she's made in a very short amount of time. But how significant are these changes? And I would say the vast majority of the changes we've yet to see that they're any good yet. It's going to take years to actually see if the changes that she's trying to make, the culture that she's trying to build, are actually going to lead to a positive, net positive for Xbox. So I still am hesitant of Asha, but her charm tour is working on me. She is starting to make me think, hey, she has the ability and the chutzpah to make some actual changes here, and maybe she'll make some changes that are for the better, and I appreciate that. So we'll continue to keep an eye on Xbox. Next, analysts says Rockstar should charge GTA. I'll say that again for you. Analysts say Rockstar should charge more for GTA 6, quote, for the good of the entire industry. This is coming from Bank of America analyst Omar Dasuki. He said, quote, "We also heard from attendees, this is at GDC, I believe, that at the industry, which is perceived to be struggling, would have difficulty selling games for $80 if GTA 6 came out at 70." He wrote, "We think that we think it's in Take-Two's self-interest as a publisher and partner for many developers to raise the price point for the entire industry." Whew! This has been a talking point for a long time. What the heck is GTA 6 going to cost? Well, I'm just going to say right now, it's going to cost you more money than you want. As of last year, we had another analyst come out, Mr. Matthew Ball from Epillion. He came out and he said that there was a hope among figures in the game industry that GTA would cost up to $100 so that other companies could raise their default prices as well amid global inflation and swelling AAA development costs. Michael Pachter, another very well-known video game analyst, he's the managing director of Wedbush Securities. He also wrote, "We think the company has plans to sell the game at a previously unheard of price point and suspect that the management can offer consumers an incentive to pay $100 or more per unit by rewarding them with a large amount of in-game currency to be spent in GTA Online." And it's worth noting, Rockstar, or parent company Take-Two, was the first major publisher to ever raise prices on their games to $70, which of course allowed all other publishers to raise their games to $70, which happened at the start of this generation with, I believe, NBA 2K or something like that, one of those games. All of that to say, it's not looking good if you want to buy GTA 6 for cheap. This game is no way, no how going to be $70. And a lot of analysts are saying, look, if they don't do it, they're dumb. If they don't do it, they are hurting the video game industry because it means that everybody's going to look at a $70 price GTA and they're going to be like, well, we can't say our game is worth more than GTA unless you're like Nintendo charging $80 for Mario Kart like World for some reason. But if GTA comes out and says, well, we're $100, well, then other publishers are going to be like, well, we can say our game is worth 80 for sure. Like it's at least it's lesser than GTA, but it's not that much. Hey, let's just try to up it a little bit. Publishers have been trying to up the cost of their games for a long time now, which is unfortunate, obviously, for a video game consumer such as myself. Again, I do think you can get a game for cheap if you wait. And I think you should be waiting for the most part. You're going to get a better product if you do. But in general, most video games are considered to be still underpriced in terms of inflation, in terms of what games used to cost in a long time ago. So a lot of companies are feeling the pinch. They want to continue to up the prices of their games, and GTA is really the only game that can get away with charging $100. And what it looks like to me is, yeah, GTA 6 is going to be $100. I think you have every analyst in the industry screaming from the rooftops, this game needs to be $100. This is a multi-billion-dollar developed game. This is a game that is going to last you 4 years. I mean, it's been, 14 years since GTA 5 came out? Something like that. And now this game's going to come out. It's probably going to be another 15 years till you get GTA 7. So you're going to be having online interactions and stuff like that in this game for the next 15 years. This is easily a game worth $100. Easily. If there's ever been a game worth $100, it's GTA 6. And you're going to probably have to pay it. And you're probably sitting there and you're going to be like, oh, no, there's no way. I would never pay $100 for GTA 6. I'm sorry. You will. At least, maybe not you, Mr. Hardcore Gamer listening to this right now. Maybe not you. Because you have 100 other million games to play, and maybe GTA 6 is not like your cup of tea. You have a million other cup of teas that you can drink in the meantime. But I think it's GTA 5 is one of the best-selling games of all time, ever. Millions and millions and millions and millions of copies continue to be sold today. They still continue to be sold. One of the best-selling games on the market right now. I think if you don't want it, somebody else does. And somebody else is willing to pay $100. You may say you're not, but most consumers, I think, out there are going to be willing to. And it's like, okay, well, let's say they lose 1 in 5 people. I think you would maybe say that's underestimating how many people would not want to buy the game if it's $100. But I think that's probably fairly, like, if you are already right now saying, I want GTA 6, day one, I will pick up GTA 6. If they come out and they say it's $100, I think at least 80% of people are going to still be willing to say, yeah, sure, I'll pick that up. $100 is worth it. I really, 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 really want to play GTA 6. Okay, they lose 20% of their consumers up front. There will eventually be sales. They'll eventually get them. They lose 20% of their consumers up front. Well, they made an extra 30% on their game because they upped it $30. It was going to be $70, now it's $100. They've made their money back and then some. So it is easily worth it to do what they're going to want to do, and that's charge it at $100. So I think if you are looking for a deal on GTA 6, you are out of luck, and that is really unfortunate, and it's really going to start a domino effect for the rest of the industry, but it is also inevitable. It's also inevitable and maybe warranted. I'd love to hear what people have to say about it, but maybe even warranted. So that is another time I've had to mention that. That's probably like the third time I've talked about that, but it's just looking more and more and more unlikely that you're paying $70 for GTA 6. And finally for the news, we have Star Fox gets announced with a kind of crazy Nintendo dropped a direct 10 minutes prior. It's like, okay, in 10 minutes, we're going to have a Star Fox direct. See you then. I remember I opened up Twitter. I was like, oh, frick, what? I missed a direct? Like, I feel like I was not away from my phone that long, and I missed a direct? What the frick? Yeah, because they announced the direct like 10, 20 minutes before it actually started, and then they just did it. It was a Star Fox direct, and they announced Star Fox, and it's a remake of Star Fox 64. It'll be out June 25th. It comes with new content, such as a prologue mission featuring Fox's father, new cinematic cutscenes that allow players to discover more about the Star Fox team, a challenge mode, and a suite of multiplayer scenarios, including online play. A couple other small things, like a weird VTuber mode where you can use your face and like put Fox's face on yours in like game chat and stuff, stuff like that. But most of this is just a straight 1-to-1 Star Fox 64 remake. This is obviously them trying to build the Star Fox brand back up. Obviously, Fox was recently in the Super Mario Galaxy film. He was a very large marketing push for that game, and I'm not going to say a huge part of the game, or excuse me, the movie, but he was definitely involved. So this is them, I would say, obviously trying to test the waters. This game looks really good, and when I say looks really good, I mean the graphics look very nice. The update graphically looks very nice. I like it, at the very least. And I would say this is going to be the obvious definitive way to play Star Fox 64. And it's so funny when I went through the history of Star Fox. So Star Fox is a series that really is quite funny because it is really a series based off of remakes. So Star Fox 64 is actually a remake. It's a 3D remake of one of the original Star Fox games. And then Star Fox 64 got remade into the 3DS version, so Star Fox 64 3D. And then there was another version on the Wii U that I think also remade Star Fox 64. So basically, this is another Star Fox 64. Like half of the games in this series are all just based off of that original Star Fox game, which was then turned into Star Fox 64. And Star Fox 64 was really the only game that was ever reviewed well from the series. I went through all the reviews for all the games. I know some people have a nostalgia for like Star Fox Adventure, but even that game did not review well. So like Star Fox 64, I think is an 88 on Metacritic, or maybe even a 90. I can't remember, but it is a very, very well reviewed game. It is just really the only one in the series that has ever done well. And so this is the safe bet, is essentially what I'm saying. If you're going to remake any of these games, if you're going to make a new Star Fox game, don't make a new one, because all the new ones have not done very well critically, and I'm assuming commercially. And the only one that's ever done well is Star Fox 64. This is a series that I'm surprised is still around. It's kind of like Metroid. It's like, yeah, people like to say, honestly, I don't even see very many people clamoring for a new Star Fox game. I very rarely see people say like, "Oh yeah, Star Fox is my favorite Nintendo franchise." Like I never see that. I see people say I love playing as Fox in Smash Brothers, but like that's it. Like that's not a Star Fox game, obviously. So, it's like F-Zero, almost. It's like, yeah, I guess if they announced a new F-Zero game, I guess some people would be excited, but like most people only give a frick about Captain Falcon because he's in Smash Brothers and they like playing as Captain Falcon in Smash Brothers. It's not because the games are their favorite. But Star Fox 64 is considered good. So, there is that at least to consider, but this is the safe way of going about it. This is not a new game. And so what this obviously is an attempt to drum up excitement for the franchise, to gauge success. Is this game going to be worth your time, your money? And if it is, do people like it? And if so, we'll make another one, and so on and so forth. It's only going to be $50 if you buy it digitally on the PlayStation Store, which is great. An accessible price point. You have to understand that this game is not very long. It is, again, a 1-to-1 remake of Star Fox 64. So Star Fox 64 is not a very long game. It is a game that is meant to be replayed. There is replayability in those levels. I will most certainly be picking this up. I have always wanted to try out Star Fox 64. I've never played a Star Fox game. Like I said, they've never been reviewed well. And honestly, like a on rail shooter has never appealed to me. It's never been something that I've been like, oh yeah, that looks great. But Nintendo is Nintendo, and they do tend to convince me to pick up their games. They do tend to do well with the games that they create and have a lot of charm and intrigue and a lot of crossover between their other properties, like with Smash Brothers. So it helps to be appreciative of all of their properties. And maybe that's just me being a consumer pig wanting to buy everything. But for $50, I'm at least a little bit more inclined to say, yeah, I'll give it a shot. And the game, to me, actually did look pretty nice. And, the interaction with the characters and story and all that, I'm actually legitimately intrigued. It looks like a game that has a lot of budget and polish behind it. So I'm pretty satisfied with this. I think it is definitely a safe move. I think if you are excited about it, like, holy frick, this is the return of Fox, I think you may want to tamper down your expectations a little bit. It is a remake of Star Fox 64, as I've said 5 times. So, like, this is not anything crazy. And, it does not help the series a lot to say, well, we've remade this game 50 times, and we really still have not found anything other than this one game that makes anybody excited at all. And I think that's rough. I think that's rough. That speaks that Star Fox as a series either has been handed off to people who don't know what to do with it, or is a series that doesn't typically appeal to people in terms of its gameplay. And I have to admit, like, other than the nostalgic factor and the historical factor that, like, this is a very big Nintendo game, I don't think the gameplay behind Star Fox is very interesting. I'm not a big flight sim guy. I'm not a big dogfighting guy. So, like, I don't play freaking Ace Combat or anything like that. So I'm not about trying a flight sim game, and an on-rail shooter is not necessarily something that piques my interest very easily either. So I understand why there's not a lot of excitement for Star Fox as a franchise. And cool that they're trying to make it a thing, but I feel like Star Fox is one of those properties that really only got popular because of one title and because it's in Smash Brothers, and people like playing as Fox in Smash Brothers, and that's it. So I don't know. I'll be playing it. I'll be trying it out. June 25th is right around the corner, but it's interesting. I'll say it's interesting. Let's keep it at that. All right, so on to the final segment of the show. Where are we at? We're at 144. Oh man, 145. Guys, thanks for sticking around through all that. I think the impressions will be fairly short, but we're probably breaking easily into 2 hours on this one, baby. So let's start talking about Sonic Superstars for the impressions here. Sonic Superstars. So it's a little bit of a funny backstory with me trying to pick this one up, because I recently spoke on, I believe, the last episode of the podcast, if not the episode before last, on how much I don't like classic Sonic games. I got a lot of flack online for that as well. A few clips went kind of viral on, or they performed better than most of my clips. I'll just say that. Viral is a very greatly exaggerated term for my clips, most certainly. But it did fairly well, and it pissed off a lot of people. But that's because I said I don't like classic Sonic and modern Sonic is better. And I fully admit both are flawed significantly. But Sonic fans are one of those fans. I knew when I posted that clip, I was like, this is going to piss people off, because Sonic fans are very passionate. And by passionate, I mean they're kind of autistic. And that is the worst kind of people to piss off, because they are never going to let you live it down. But in this case, I did play a classic Sonic game from beginning to end. It is probably the first classic Sonic game I've ever beaten. So why did I play a classic Sonic game if I have ultimately already stated I do not like classic Sonic? Well, I'll tell you. My brother knows that I'm a fan of Sonic, and he bought me. I have a very long history with Sonic. Sonic Adventure was the first game I ever played. It was the first game I ever owned on the Sega Dreamcast, so it has a very big nostalgic place in my heart. So he knows that, and so he bought me a sweatshirt with classic Sonic characters on it, and some of them were from Sonic Mania. At the time, I did not realize they were from Sonic Mania, and I thought that they were from the newest. It was an older sweatshirt. I thought it was a new sweatshirt that had just been released or something, just put onto the market. And I thought that it was from freaking the newest Sonic game. The newest classic Sonic game is Sonic Superstars. So I was like, okay, well, I have to play this game now, because like there's now this gift that I have from my brother, and I want to be able to fully understand it, because there are characters on this shirt that like I don't really know anything about, because they're not from any other games other than those classic Sonic games. So like I need to play them. So I eventually saw Sonic Superstars on a deep sale on Woot, which, if you're unfamiliar what Woot is essentially the clearance arm of Amazon. So if it is a thing that they are just trying to get rid of and sell for dirt cheap, Woot is where it goes. So Sonic Superstars was about $6 on Woot at one point, and I was like, great, this is the perfect price point for me to get in on Sonic Superstars, because this was a $60 game. It was a full price title when it initially released, which did not help it, I guarantee. So I looked at the reviews for this, and it's like a 73 on Metacritic. It did not do particularly well. And that's funny, too, because Sonic Mania is a classic Sonic game. And I don't know what the frick the difference is between Sonic Superstars and Sonic Mania necessarily, but people really frickin' didn't like this game, and they really liked Sonic Mania. Still cannot tell you what Sonic Mania did to be better than any other Sonic classic game, but whatever, dude. I am not the audience to figure that out, so I understand. Here's the thing about Sonic Superstars. Sonic Superstars 1 is the first classic Sonic game that does not have lives. So you are just working off of just getting to the end of the stage and calling it a day. Great. Love it. Because the thing that killed me on Sonic Mania, the reason I stopped playing Sonic Mania was because I kept dying. I would die in Sonic Mania, and then I would have to start all over. I would fall down some bottomless pit, lose a life, and then have to start all over from the beginning of the stage again at some point after losing all my lives. And I got sick of it. I was just like, just please let me just get through the freaking stage. I just want to see the end of the game. I don't really care about mastering this freaking platforming that I don't think is very satisfying or good in the first place. So I've bailed on it. Sonic Superstars gets rid of the live situation. It never needed to be there or never, not never, but like it didn't need to be there for a long time anyways, because a live systems is just like a very archaic like function of the past from video games, where we were putting things like putting quarters into machines in order to play games, and that's how they got money out of you. So now that we've paid full price for a game, we don't need to do that anymore. So great, take the lives out. That's just annoying. So great, I was able to beat the game. On top of that, this game is not that long. It's like 5, maybe 6 hours. I think I beat it in under 6 for sure, because I was just speeding through it, and because I even got kind of bored with it towards the end of the game. But what makes this really, honestly, a great game to me, not a great game, but the best classic Sonic game I've ever played to me, is the fact that every single stage, every single new area you go to, there's a new gimmick. There's a new thing that you have to interact with and deal with. And I would say most platformers would introduce a new thing or a new mechanic, and they would really hone in on that. You know, they would be like, okay, well, we're going to make you do this for at least 3 stages, because this is a whole new mechanic and we can kind of expand upon it and elaborate on it. And that would make it a worthwhile thing for us to develop and extra content for the player to enjoy. And the problem with that is I got sick of any gimmick within one stage. I was like, please do not make me do that again. Like, I do not need you to elaborate and make this any more complicated or difficult, because I do not enjoy the platforming in general in this game. So I was like, please, for the love of God, just let me move on. And that's what the game did. It was like, no, dude, like, we only wanted you to see that gimmick one time to just kind of spice things up, and we're good. We really don't need you to play that anymore. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so refreshing. Like, I'm going from one classic Sonic stage to the next, and there's some gimmick, but it is a gimmick that does not overstay its welcome, and it does change it up. It adds a little spice to the mix, and I'm able to kind of enjoy myself for that one stage and then be like, okay, I'm done, moving on. And so I was like, dude, I actually really enjoy the pacing here. And I don't know if that's just me, because I was like, F this game from a core, like fundamental perspective of just being a classic Sonic game. But like in general, I was like, bro, this is amazing. Why doesn't every classic Sonic game do this? This is the best thing they've ever figured out. So here's where we get into the bad stuff. So we've already gotten into the bad stuff. Now, okay, look, okay, I've already kind of come out as like a classic Sonic hater. This is not my kind of game. It's not what I would typically want to deal with. So I'm not going to get into the fundamentals of what I typically have issues with classic Sonic, of, you know, like it being too stop and go, it focusing on exploration more than speed, it being too drawn, the camera being too close to the character, so you know you can't really actually avoid obstacles when you're trying to go fast, stuff like that. There's a million and one different things that I think make classic Sonic a very flawed experience from a core fundamental perspective, but we're going to move past that. Here's things that are actually freaking wrong with the game that make this game not as good. Number one, and this is probably my biggest pet peeve, the music. The music in this game is utterly forgettable, if not bad at times, and that is almost mind-blowing, because I think the Sonic games have some of the strongest soundtracks in any game ever. Like I have Rooftop Run on my freaking iPod in multiple different iterations of it, because I love every iteration of Rooftop Run. There's several other tracks from pretty much every Sonic game has like that one track that you're like, dang, that's a banger. Like I can think of a couple of tracks from like Sonic Adventure that are super awesome, up and down and all around. Like I often go back to Up and Down and All Around, bro. That is peak Sonic Adventure soundtrack. Well, it's not really, because then you also have like, yeah, Knuckles. I don't chuckle. I'd rather flex my muscles. Like that kind of the Knuckles theme song from Sonic Adventure. There's a lot of stuff from Sonic Adventure that's pretty nostalgic in its own corny kind of goofy way. But in general, Sonic has a really good soundtrack. This soundtrack sucks. It's not good. It's not memorable. The overworld theme loops like every 5 seconds. Like you need at least a solid 15-30 second loop before for me to not want to blow my brains out for any looping soundtrack. And this is like a straight up 5 to 10 second loop of the same mind-numbing overworld theme whenever you're selecting a stage. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like you really couldn't figure out that this was like not good. Like I'm very surprised that you couldn't just either elongate this theme or add some more spice to it to not make it so bland and unpalatable while I'm like sitting around doing nothing for a while. No stage, any theme from any stage stood out to me. Not a single one. The soundtrack is utterly bland, utterly unforgivable in a lot of situations, and sometimes just bad. So that's already like a massive strike on any Sonic game if your soundtrack is bad. I don't think I've ever said that before about a Sonic game, but this soundtrack, not bueno. Number 2, and I think what ultimately, it was very funny too, because I was reading reviews for this game as I was going, and a lot of the reviews were like, F this game's boss fights, which every stage actually ends in a boss fight, which in my opinion is great, because I feel like boss fights are one of those things from a bygone era in video games now that you just don't really see all that much. So having a boss fight every stage is pretty nice and makes, for a nice, good change of pace and a nice challenge, right? Holy frick. So I was like, why are people upset with these bosses? And towards the end of the game, the bosses become very long. Like they are not like you need to hit the boss 3 times and it's dead. It's like there is a long sequence of platforming and of insta-kill deaths and stuff like that you need to avoid in order to beat this boss. And you're easily going to be spending 5 minutes nonstop on a boss just to kill them. And you cannot take hits. I mean, you can obviously take hits, but like you can only take really like 1 or 2 hits because of the ring system in Sonic. Like you have to pick up a ring. So if you can't do it, then like you're just going to die. And in a lot of these fights, you cannot pick up another ring because, you're flying on a freaking helicopter or something or a biplane, and if you fall, you essentially lose everything immediately. Or some of the later stage boss fights have a lot of like insta-kill pits. And so there was one boss fight towards the end of the game, I genuinely almost threw my controller across the room. And I am not that kind of guy. I do not ever freaking do that. But it was like, I genuinely don't know what the frick you want me to do here. Like, this is a poorly designed boss fight, and if I make a single mistake, then I have to start the entire 5-minute boss fight over again, and that pisses me off. Now, this is only towards the end of the game, so the beginning of the game I had no issue with at all. It was typical easy boss fights. You go through, you hit the boss 3 times, they're dead, it's over. It's a one-screen thing. It is towards the end of the game when the game is trying to be a little bit more grandiose. It's trying to be a little bit more climactic. The boss fights go on for way too long, and they are patterned boss fights, so you can't speed it up. It's just sitting there waiting for these things to occur. So it sucks. And I was like, bro, when I first started playing the game, I was like, you guys are freaking stupid. I don't know why you guys are knocking points off of the game because some of the boss fights are bad. And it's like, no, like I totally get it at this point. They are rage inducing. It almost prevented me from beating the game, and it was like the second to last stage, and I was like, I refuse to go any further with this game. This game is dead to me. And I eventually powered through it and beat it. And it was one of those things I didn't feel like it was even skill that helped me get through it. It was just like luck. Like certain things just didn't hit me when they normally would have in other times, or certain gaps appeared in places that were easier to jump over and stuff like that were insta-kill pits. So like I didn't really feel like it was me performing any better. It was just the game's RNG didn't kill me 50 times in a row. So I was not really cool with that at all. So yeah, the boss fights in this game suck major balls. One of the biggest things in this game that they try to throw out there is the Chaos Emeralds, which I actually liked for the majority of the game. If you find a secret area in the game, which most of them are pretty easy to find, I didn't collect all of them, so I missed a good number of them. But like very early on in the game, they kind of give you some of them, but they give you specific powers every Chaos Emerald. So there's 7 Chaos Emeralds if you're unfamiliar with Sonic lore, and when you get all 7, you super mode, basically Super Saiyan Sonic, and each Chaos Emerald you get a special power. And that power allows you to get to new areas within a level, or do certain things. So like one of them is like, well, you can see platforms that are or interact with platforms that you can't interact with unless you use this power. One is like a boost that lets you go straight up or to the left or to the right. One is like a tree, so you can like plant a tree and like it will sprout a ladder essentially for you to go further up using. So there's various powers that you can grab and have access to. I never used them. I never used them at any point. And you actually can use them every checkpoint, once every checkpoint. So it's pretty generous, in all honesty. But for the most part, I was like, I don't really want to use them. I don't feel the need to use them. I'm pretty certain I can get to the end of the stage just by holding the right on the analog stick. So while these powers were cool, I did find them somewhat hard to complete, and I did find them somewhat unnecessary in the grand scheme of things. I wish that there was a little bit more implementation that made them easier to use or more beneficial for me to use. But in general, I just feel like classic Sonic in general doesn't need these powers, so it didn't add too much to the game overall. The art style for this game is also pretty uninspired and generic. I'll give you that. Sonic Mania looks really pretty. I'll give you that. This game, it looks like a pretty dated game. It looks like it really should have been a PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4 game. The fact that it is a modern game is it's questionable, I guess, is the best way I can say that. So overall, this package, in terms of gameplay, I actually liked. Like, I actually thought this game was good in terms of gameplay. I think an overall package, there's way too many blemishes on it that are significant. You have a bad soundtrack, you have bad boss fights, you have mechanics that don't really add anything to the game, you have a lackluster presentation. These all add up to like, oh yeah, well, these are still significant parts of the game. Like your soundtrack, your presentation, your boss fights, those are all pretty significant parts of the game that if they're not done very well, can definitely take a nick out of your score. Like, it's not like, oh, well, the UI was bad, and so I gave it a 7 out of 10. It's like, well, okay, like, yeah, you should have a good UI, but, like, does that really destroy your fun with a Sonic game? No, probably not. It's probably not really going to affect much. In this case, enough of these things add up to be, oh, well, this game is not really that great. So while I overall enjoyed Sonic Superstars from a gameplay perspective, the variety of the levels, it constantly changed things up and kept me engaged, and I didn't have to worry about, constantly game overing and starting an entire level over again. I appreciated the game from that perspective, and it ended up being my favorite classic Sonic game. There are still a lot of issues with this game that ultimately I totally get why this game did not review super well, and how it's really just kind of a shame because it could have reviewed much better, I think. So that's Sonic Superstars, if you were curious. And then finally, our final impressions of the episode, and this is, I think, a big one, right? It's Metal Gear Solid Delta. Metal Gear Solid Delta is a remake of Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater. which is, in my opinion, the best game in the series. I love Metal Gear. Gotta love Hideo Kojima. It's hard for me to hate most of what he does, or really anything that he does. But in this case, Metal Gear Solid 3 is often considered kind of the fan favorite. And not only that, it is chronologically the first game in the Metal Gear series. So it makes sense for them to want to remake this game first, even though it doesn't, because they probably should have just remade the first game first, because it's the one that needs the most treatment and love and care in terms of a remake. But this game originally came out on the PlayStation 2, and this was still kind of in a situation where Konami was not really super loved. People didn't know what to think about Konami still coming out of the ashes of trying to make games again. And in this case, they made a very faithful remake to Metal Gear Solid 3. And it was kind of considered a problem to some people. So this game is an 85 on Metacritic. Not bad, but not fantastic either. Considering the original is high 80s, if not like a 90 or something like that. I'd have to go back and double check the original scores or the current scores on Metacritic. But it was considered very good. I mean, one of the best games ever made in a lot of ways. So this game is lower reviewed than the original. And you would think a game that's considered a classic would still be considered very good and still review very similarly. I had this game in Fantasy Critic in my league, and it reviewed lower than I really anticipated it reviewing, and I was kind of disappointed by it, but like still solid reviews, and the game is still all intact and there. And why did it review less? Well, let's talk about the game, shall we? So, if you've ever played Metal Gear Solid 3, you will know that this game is the same freaking game. It is the same. And you're like, okay, well, let's just talk about the game first. Okay, you're playing as Snake. He is going through the jungle and he is sneaking or attacking his way through enemy bases. He's, putting on disguises, tricking the enemy, doing some really crazy boss fights with some crazy characters. This is a Kojima game, Hideo Kojima game, so you're going to be doing a lot of really interesting and crazy stuff. There's a lot of fun Easter eggs and stuff to kind of discover as you go through the game, which is always great. That is the highlight of this game, right? If you want to try out Metal Gear Solid 3, I highly encourage you to do so. I'm kind of I shouldn't have said that, because now I'm going to have to jump the gun here and say I would not recommend this version. And there is nothing wrong with this version either. And so you're like, okay, well, what the frick? What's going on here, Henry? Like you say you recommend Metal Gear. Why don't you recommend the remake? That makes no sense. Well, what is a remake? What is a remake? Who art thou? And a remake, in a lot of ways, I would say is just a new version of the old game, right? So like Dead Space. Dead Space recently came out. They added some new things, some quality of life, yada, yada, yada. And I think the Dead Space remake is great. It looks fantastic. It plays fantastic. There are quality of life improvements there that make the game better to play overall. You can't really go wrong with the Dead Space remake. I would recommend the Dead Space remake over the original Dead Space, because there's enough improvements, quality of life there that make it worth your investment. What did they do to the Metal Gear Solid Delta remake? Well, obviously you have a new coat of paint. So there is a new graphics. It's all made from the ground up. It all looks much better than the original. Great. They also added some new features. So there's an online mode. We'll get into that in a minute. There is a remade Platinum, and that you probably raised your eyebrows at that. Platinum. Oh, the makers of Bayonetta. Oh my. They made an action sequence for this game as well. So there's an Easter egg in the original game that I think during the torture sequence, if you trigger an Easter egg successfully, you'll go into the demo of another game, which is an action game where you're like fighting vampires and stuff. Well, Platinum made from the ground up a remake of that. You actually have access to it once you beat the game, which is, hey, great, right? That sounds amazing. They also added a new camera perspective. So Metal Gear Solid has kind of been known for having a specific kind of camera, like isometric over the head camera. You're kind of looking down on the character as you progress through areas. In this, you have an over the shoulder third person perspective now. So you can also choose to do the old perspective if you'd like, but most players, based on the trophies that I'm seeing, are playing on the more modern third person mode, which is understandable. I wanted to play that way as well, and it works out. It's very nice. That is really it. Nothing else has changed. And I mean that in the worst way possible. And I didn't think I could. Like, they even reused the voice acting for cutscenes. So the voice acting lines that you're hearing are from the original game. They have not re-recorded anything or added any cutscenes in any way. It is the exact same thing, one for one. So there is nothing new there, and it feels like the same game in every way. Areas feel the exact same because they are the exact same. No changes have been made. They still feel old. They feel more dated. And let me just say this. Okay, so let's start going back through the editions, right? First edition that I mentioned was the new coat of paint, ground up remake, new graphics. Okay, you're remaking a PlayStation 2 game. The PlayStation 2 game obviously doesn't have very great graphics. It's a little cartoony, a little anime-esque. How do you modernize that? Well, do you make it really realistic? Do you make it anime? And they went for something kind of in between. It honestly looks like they tried to just like use AI to like modernize the original PS2 art style. Characters look kind of cartoony, kind of blocky, but also realistic at the same time. I do not love the graphical updates here. And in fact, some of the charm of the original art style from the PlayStation 2 game, in my opinion, seems to have been lost in the translation for the graphics being modernized. So I didn't hate the graphics, but I was like, honestly, I would probably rather just replay the game on PlayStation 2 or PlayStation 3 because they re-released the game there as well. So I'd probably just rather replay it there for that kind of the original art style. Okay. Number 2, that platinum thing that they added. Okay, cool. The platinum thing is great. We all love that platinum stepped up. Holy frick, this is the most bare bones. Like, I played it. It feels like they worked on it for like 3 or 4 days and they just were like, here you go, you can have it, and just kind of took the check and ran. It feels like, I wouldn't even say it feels like a demo. It feels like an alpha for a fighting game. There's some polish there, but you're basically dropped in the middle of one area, a pretty small area, and a bunch of monsters, which there are only 2, basically come out of the ground until you die. They will continue just to come at you in more and more numbers until you die. You have one combo that you can spam over and over and over again. There's no UI, no anything. You just kind of keep mashing buttons until you die. And it is not very fun. It is maybe fun for all of 30 seconds when you probably have seen all the combos that you can do, and you're like, okay, I guess I'll just spam these over and over and over again until I die, and then you will never want to touch that thing again. So it is not worth it at all. And then you have the newly added online mode. Well, I would love to tell you more about the online mode, but I tried to play the online mode, which, by the way, this game has not even been out for a full year. And I tried to play it, I believe, on a Thursday night, I think. And I was matchmaking for 5 minutes. And I said, well, nobody is freaking playing this anymore. And I uninstalled it. And I was like, because that was the last thing I tried to do in the game, was I played that. So I was like, well, F me, I guess. Nobody is playing this game. I'm out. Like, so basically, if you really wanted to play the Metal Gear Solid multiplayer mode in Metal Gear Delta, nobody is playing it right now, so you will never find a match, and it is completely worthless, which is pretty funny because it looks like they really did put like a lot of time and effort into that mode. There are microtransactions that you can buy. There is, I mean, like when you put this game, I had a disc. So when you install this game, more than half of the game is a patch, which, by the way, this mode, the multiplayer mode, actually came out like months after the original game released. So the online mode was a download patch that you had to completely download. It was like 50 gigs or something, over 50 gigs just to download the multiplayer in general, which you're forced to do. So, it's a huge part of this freaking game, and I don't think anybody's freaking playing it, so it's completely worthless. You still have access to a couple of other like bonus materials here and there, but this is not anything like crazy. I would not, I think there's some new collectibles that you can really sink your teeth into. It's not worth it. I think you unlock some concept art or some costumes or something like that. It's really nothing worth your time. And in that instance, I look at this game and I say, well, what is it doing? It is trying to just be a new coat of paint, but it's so much the same thing that I really honestly would tell you. And because the art style I feel is like a little bit watered down, and because it's so 1-to-1, and you can get Metal Gear Solid 3 right now for like $5. This game is still $30-$40 on sale. So if you are like, I really cannot play this game isometric camera, I hate the art style of the old one and prefer the new one for whatever reason, then yeah, sure. This is probably what I would recommend to you, but I would, for the vast majority of people, actually still recommend Metal Gear Solid 3 on like the PlayStation 2, or more so probably the HD remake version of the game. I would probably recommend that over this, which is insane, right? That is crazy. I mean, this is still the same game. I mean, like I'll continue to double down on that. This is nothing different, but because it is nothing different, there is no reason for you to play it. Like I would not. I feel like I did not need to play this game. Like when I played the Dead Space remake, I felt like I was getting kind of a new experience with it, and I felt pretty good about that. I did not feel that way playing this. I felt like, man, why didn't I just play the PlayStation 2 version again? It really just feels like the exact same gosh darn thing. Like there's not much going on here that is worth my time. And I'm really disappointed to say that because I was really looking forward to playing this game because I love Metal Gear Solid 3 and I've wanted to replay it for quite some time. But I was like, honestly, I feel like I got a lesser experience playing this game and I had to pay more money for it. I kind of I'm surprised people are being I'm not going to say people are being as nice to it as they are. I feel like I'm being kind of hard on it right now. But like in general, uh yeah, there's not much of a reason for me to recommend this game. I think if you've never played the game before, honestly, I'd recommend just playing the HD remake. If you really are looking to this game, look, I am a guy who was really looking forward to this game and really wanted to play it, and even I'm like, it's really not worth your time. So like that's kind of really bad. That's really a horrible thing to say. So I don't know how they dropped the ball on this. It's obviously them, they were just playing it super safe. This was just them playing it so safe it's not even funny. And like they had something that was good enough that even if they did make a couple of small missteps, like, oh well, the graphics aren't that good, we didn't change anything at all, it's okay because like there's still so much of that original game here. There's still so much personality with the bosses and the encounters and the Easter eggs that you can find, and the story itself. And I mean, all of it, all of that base charm and fun is still there. It's just there is no reason for you to revisit it in this form. That is really what it comes down to. So overall, I was a little disappointed with Metal Gear Solid Delta. Wasn't like pissed off or anything. The game is still only like 10, 15 hours depending on how much you want to really get into it. So, and I went back. I did all the. I had never done the Ape Escape missions before. So I did the Ape Escape missions and I had fun doing those. And I kind of went back. I tried to do a couple little extra things here and there. So I did try to get my money's worth out of it, but at the end of the day, I don't think I'll ever go back to this. I think I would much rather just play the original, and I will be trading this game in absolutely at the next time I get like a 20% discount or boost at like GameStop or something, because I don't have a reason to want to keep this game around. I have the HD remakes, so I have no reason to want to continue to play this game. So I don't know. That is a long-winded way of saying they really didn't do anything to this game, and you should probably just play the original, which I think even with a new coat of paint, you'd think that would be the definitive version, but to me, it's not. So it's weird that is how they dropped the ball. But that's all I have to say about Metal Gear Solid Delta, because I mean, you probably have heard about Metal Gear, so I don't really need to get into like all the nuances of the gameplay and stuff like that. It's a great game. Go try it out. If you haven't tried Metal Gear yet, try it out. It's a great series. But anyway, that is all for this surprisingly long episode of the Plug and Play podcast. Friends, I appreciate you sticking around yet again. My voice, I'm already kind of starting to lose it. Like I said, I will be out of town, so hopefully I can get all my shorts edited within the next couple of days. And we'll have some fun stuff to talk about when I get back. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But I do appreciate you sticking around this long. 2.5 hours of listening to me jabber on, yap on, whatever word you want to say. I mean, I feel like, how did you not just turn off the podcast right there? But thank you very much. I really do genuinely appreciate it. And I hope that you are doing well. I hope that you are playing some good video games. And I hope that you are awesome. Because, I already know you're awesome because you're listening to this podcast. But I hope you're playing some good video games, friend. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.